Hi everyone, I hope you're staying warm today. I apologize if you can hear my furnace in the background. As you can imagine, it's working hard today. But the plan here is I'm going to run through the Messianic Hope passages. So I'd encourage you to annotate in your OneNote as we go through this. I have some questions for you to think about as we go through this, and they're listed at the top. So it says, what were the people hoping for in the next Mashiach? What were their expectations? How will they know when the time has come? And what should they be looking for? So remember that Messianic hope is this idea that the Jewish people are holding on to this hope that another Messiah will be coming, and one who's finally going to do things right. So as we've talked about, they've had quite a few kings who have been corrupt and really haven't stayed the course when it comes to following Yahweh and leading in good ways. So they've held out hope that there's going to be a Messiah who's going to do it right. And so these passages speak to Messianic hope. It's about what are they looking for? What are they waiting for? And so we'll try to see, what are they waiting for as we look through this. All of the passages that we're looking at are from the Old Testament, which means that they were written before the time of Jesus. So it can be very kind of tempting now that we, have the New Testament to look back and say, oh yeah, I can see where Jesus fits into all of this. And, to a certain extent, that's really appropriate. We can see how Jesus fulfills the prophecies and things like that. But it's also really beneficial to think about, well, what were the people thinking before they knew who Jesus was, before they, had any ideas of, who they really thought the Messiah was? What were they hoping for, and what were they expecting? So to a certain extent, try not to project those ideas and try to put yourselves in the shoes of the first hearers, even though I will sometimes kind of reference how things might play into our thoughts about Jesus too. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first passage comes from Psalm 2. So we're actually going to talk about the Psalms in the next unit. The rest of them will come from Isaiah, who was a prophet. So Psalm 2, why do the nations rage and protest, and the people conspire in vain? Kings on earth rise up, and princes plot together against Yahweh and against his anointed one. So remember, anointed one is that translation of the word Mashiach, anointed and chosen. So Yahweh says, I myself have installed my king on Zion, my holy mountain. So one thing we see is that they really are expecting a king. Here's the time where I'm going to reference Jesus. If people are wondering if Jesus is the Messiah that they're waiting for, then certainly plenty of people are going to be expecting that Jesus rise up and become king. And Jesus really had a different idea about what that kingship was like. So he talked about, the kingdom of God. And so there is some conflict with what people were expecting and how Jesus fulfilled that. And then it goes on Zion, my holy mountain. Zion is a reference to the city in which God dwells among the people. It's sometimes used synonymously as Jerusalem or as the heavenly city, the kingdom of God. And it goes on, so now kings give heed, take warning, judges on earth. So there's a warning and caution to the current leaders. Serve Yahweh with wonder and awe and with humility. Humility is a theme that we see here. So there's this idea that the Messiah will serve with humility. Exult with joy and trembling and accept correction lest you perish along the way when Yahweh suddenly blazes forth. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. And then the rest are from the book of Isaiah. Again, Isaiah was a prophet. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. We have this theme of light. Prophets use a lot of imagery. And so we can think about the symbolism of light and what that means as we think about sort of the hope that people bring. But we can also think about it in a literal way. So certainly as we, go forward in the accounts of Jesus's birth, we hear of this star that guides them. And people might be thinking about that as I think about this idea of a light coming with the Messiah. So it goes on, upon those who lived in a land of gloom, a bright light has shone. You have brought them abundant joy and great rejoicing. They rejoice before you as people rejoice at harvest. So think about that imagery of gardening, planting, reaping, harvesting, as they exult when dividing the spoils. For a child has been born to us, a son of David given to us. So there's the idea that the Messiah to come will be a descendant of David, okay, so of royal lineage, and the authority is upon his shoulder, and the wondrous advisor, the mighty God our hero, the everlasting Father, has called him the Prince of Peace. So there's an idea that the Messiah to come will be a Messiah and a leader of peace, and that's really important as we think about that Old Testament timeline. The Jewish people had plenty of times of unrest and times where they were oppressed and things like that. So to say that the Messiah is going to be a Prince of Peace, that's really important for people to hear who are living in a time when there's not a lot of peace. His dominion is vast and forever peaceful upon David's throne and over his kingdom, which he confirms and sustains by judgment and justice, both now and forever. The zeal of Yahweh, the God of hosts, will do this. That idea of one who is just is really important too, because they've had plenty of kings who weren't just. Think about Ahab, right? So that idea of someone ruling in a just way is one that comes up a lot as well. Isaiah chapters 10 and 11 excerpts. The forests and orchards will be consumed, soul and body, and the land will be like a sick man who wastes away. There will be so few trees remaining in the ancient forest that any child can count them. Then a shoot shall sprout from the stump of Jesse, and from his roots a bud shall blossom. So, we can look at this in a lot of different ways, but if we look at it in a symbolic way, think about like a family tree, right? And so the stump of Jesse, remember Jesse is David's dad. And so this is about royal lineage, right? So some of those good people who have come and gone before them, that time has passed. But now we have this shoot coming from that family tree. And that's what they're expecting of the Messiah. The Spirit of Yahweh shall rest upon him. So we have this idea that the Messiah will be guided by the Spirit of Yahweh. So we have the gifts of the Spirit that are really beautiful listed here that the Messiah will have. So a spirit of wisdom and understanding, a spirit of counsel and of strength, a spirit of knowledge and of wonder and awe before Yahweh. And his delight shall be to serve Yahweh in holiness and humility. Not by appearance will he judge, nor by what others say, but he shall judge the poor with justice, and decide fairly for the oppressed and afflicted of the land. And again, if we put ourselves in the shoes of the Jewish people, this is really important because that hasn't been their experience in a lot of ways, right? So in many ways, the poor have been taken advantage of and they have been oppressed. So one who will lead with justice. Then the wolf shall be a guest of the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the young goat. The calf and the young lion shall browse together with a little child to guide them. Beautiful imagery. On that day, the root of Jesse, set up as a signal for the peoples. He will be sought out by the nations. His dwelling will be glorious. Then we have the Song of the Servant of Yahweh. This is sometimes called the Suffering Servant Songs. This was written by 2nd Isaiah around 550 BC. So if you think back to our Old Testament timeline, we can be thinking about the Babylonian exile. So think about what the people are going through, right? And their oppression and things like that, and how that plays into how we interpret this. Comfort, give comfort to my people, says your God. Speak to the heart of Jerusalem and proclaim to her that her time of slavery has ended, that her guilt is expiated, that she has received double for all her sins. A voice proclaims, in the wilderness prepare the way of Yahweh. Make straight in the wasteland a highway for our God. Every valley shall be lifted up, every mountain and hill made low. The rugged land shall be a fruitful plain, the rough country a broad and fertile valley. Then the glory of Yahweh shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of Yahweh has spoken. Okay, so the time of slavery has ended. And again, that's important for people in exile to hear. It's very comforting. Like a shepherd, he feeds his flock. His arms, he gathers the lambs, carrying them in his bosom, leading the ewes with care. So now we have this imagery of a shepherd. So remember that David was a shepherd. And so we, again, sort of have this connection with David. It's really beautiful imagery to think of, the Messiah, the anointed and chosen one, leading the way that a shepherd does, gathering the lambs and providing for them and protecting them, which has not, again, been their experience in many ways with kings. Do you not know, have you not heard, Yahweh is God from of old, creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary, and his knowledge is beyond scrutiny. He gives power to the faint, abundant strength to the weak. The young men faint and grow weary, and youth stagger and fall. Those who hope in Yahweh will renew their strength. They will soar on eagle's wings. They will run and not grow weary, walk and not grow faint. Those are really words of encouragement. The afflicted and the needy cry out for water, their tongues are parched with thirst. But I, Yahweh, will answer them. I will turn the wilderness into a marshland, and the dry ground into springs of water. So something from nothing, right? All of the other kings of the earth are nothing. Their works are not. Their idols empty wind. But here is my servant, whom I uphold, my chosen one with whom I am pleased. Upon him I have put my spirit. He shall bring forth justice to the nations. So we have this word servant used several times. And again, it's this idea that it's the Messiah is going to be one who's a servant to Yahweh, and who will serve for the people, not selfishly for himself, like, some of the kings like Ahab. Thus says God, Yahweh, who created the heavens and stretched them out. I have sent you to open the eyes of the blind, to bring out prisoners from confinement, and to release from the dungeon those who live in darkness. We'll hear this again, similar ideas quoted from Jesus, and so we can kind of be thinking about that a little bit. How does Jesus fulfill these things? Maybe sometimes how is there conflict? I will turn darkness into light before them and make crooked ways straight. Thus says Yahweh, your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel, who opens a way in the sea, a path in the mighty waters. See, I am doing something new. Now it springs forth, do you not perceive it? In the wilderness I make a way, in the wasteland rivers. Think about your something new project, right? And kind of that opening of what can happen. Thus says Yahweh, your Redeemer, who formed you from the womb. I am Yahweh, who made all things, who alone stretched out the heavens. I say to Jerusalem, be inhabited, to the cities of Judah, be rebuilt. I will raise up the ruins, my servant, the chosen one, shall rebuild my city, and let my people go free without price or payment. So again, not taking advantage, right? And freedom. I am Yahweh your God, teaching you how to prevail, leading you on the way you should go. If only you would attend to my commandments, your peace would be like a river, your vindication like the waves of the sea, your descendants like the sand. Yahweh spoke to me again and said, it is too little for you to be my servant, to raise up the tribes of Jacob and restore the survivors of Israel. I will make you a light to the nations, that my salvation may reach to the ends of the earth. Thus says Yahweh to all who are despised and mistreated and enslaved. When kings see you, they shall stand up, and princes shall bow down, because I, Yahweh, am faithful. I, the Holy One of Israel, have chosen and anointed you. So again, comfort to those who are oppressed and mistreated, right? Think about, reaching out to the margins. There's the care for the underdog idea. Yahweh, our God, has given me a well-trained tongue that I might know how to speak to the weary a word that will waken them. I gave my back to those who beat me, my cheeks to those who tore out my beard. This passage, a lot of this has a connection. We often kind of think about that in connection to Jesus' suffering and death. But again, this is before the time of Jesus, so think about how the people might be interpreting this. My face I did not hide from insults and spitting. Yahweh our God is my help, therefore I am not disgraced. I have set my face like flint, knowing that I shall not be put to shame. Behold, Yahweh our God is my help, who will declare me guilty? Hear me, you who long for justice, you people who have my teaching at heart. Do not fear the hatred of others. Remain firm at their mistreatment. They shall be like a garment eaten by moths. But Yahweh's victory shall remain forever, salvation from Yahweh for all generations. Thus says Yahweh our God, behold, my servant shall prosper. He shall be raised high and greatly exalted. He had no majestic bearing to catch your eye, no beauty to draw us to him. So even though there's this expectation that the Messiah will be a descendant of David, there's also this idea that maybe he won't really appear, to be royal. He was spurned and avoided by men, a man of suffering, knowing pain. We had all gone astray like sheep, all following our own way. Though harshly treated, he submitted and did not cry out. Like a lamb led to the slaughter or a sheep silent before shearers, he did not open his mouth. Seized and condemned, he was taken away. Who would have thought any more of his destiny? For he was cut off from the land of the living. He was given a grave among the wicked, a burial place with evildoers, though he had done no wrong. But my servant the just one shall justify the many and bring them to right, because he surrendered himself to death and was counted among the evildoers, bore the sins of many, and interceded for those who had done wrong. All who are thirsty, come to the water. You who have no money, come, buy grain and eat. Why spend your money for what is not bread, your wages for what does not satisfy? Only listen to me, and you shall eat well. You shall delight in rich fare. Pay attention and come to me. Listen, that you may have life. So, gotta kind of try to make sense of this idea. What does this mean to have life? Seek Yahweh while he may be found. Call upon our God while he is near. Let the wicked forsake their way and sinners their thoughts. Let them turn to Yahweh to find mercy, to our God, who is generous and forgiving. So ultimately we see that the Meshiach they were waiting for would have all of the best qualities of the good Meshiachs who had come before him. He would unite the people like King David had, and care for the people like a shepherd cares for his sheep. He would rebuild and lead people back to right worship of God like Solomon, and he would be like Cyrus the Great, who allowed them back to their home and out of oppression. But he would not be like Ahab, who only cared about himself. What other thoughts and questions do you have? You can bring those ideas with you to class.